Picture this. I'm standing in the middle of first class, holding my 78-year-old father in my arms like a baby, while a woman in a $300 tracksuit screams at me that I'm making a scene. The entire cabin is dead silent, flight attendants are frozen in shock, and my dad, bless his heart, whispers in my ear, "Sweetheart, I think we're about to go viral." But how did we get here? How did a simple trip to visit my grandkids turn into the most satisfying moment of petty revenge I've ever experienced? Well, let me tell you the whole story. Because what happened at that gate, what this entitled woman tried to do to my father, it still makes my blood boil. But the way it all played out? Chef's kiss, pure poetic justice. 3 weeks ago, I was sitting at my kitchen table in Phoenix, staring at a photo of my two granddaughters in Portland. Emma, 6, and Sophie, 4. They'd been begging their parents for months about when Grandpa Joe and Grandma Sarah were coming to visit. My husband Joe had just turned 78, and while his mind was still sharp as a tack, his mobility had taken a real hit after his hip replacement surgery 6 months earlier. The man who used to build furniture with his bare hands now needed a walker to get around. It broke my heart every single day. "Sarah," he said that morning, shuffling into the kitchen with that determined look I'd learned to recognize over 52 years of marriage, "I want to see those girls. I don't care if I have to crawl to get there." Now, flying at our age isn't exactly fun anymore. My back starts aching after an hour in those cramped seats, and Joe needed special assistance. But those grandbabies were worth every bit of discomfort. I called the airline and made sure we had everything arranged. Wheelchair assistance, early boarding, seats together. I dotted every I and crossed every T, or so I thought. The morning of our flight, Joe was more excited than I'd seen him in months. He'd packed a whole suitcase just with gifts for the girls' hand-carved wooden animals he'd been working on for weeks, despite his arthritis making every cut painful. "You know what, Sarah?" he said as we waited for our Uber to the airport. "I may not be able to chase them around the yard anymore, but I can still tell them stories. I can still make them laugh. I should have known right then that someone was going to try to ruin this trip for us." Phoenix Sky Harbor was busier than usual that Tuesday morning. You know how it is, everyone rushing around with their rolling suitcases, people on phones, that constant airport energy that makes your shoulders tense up before you even get to security. Joe was doing his best with the walker, but I could see him getting tired already, and we hadn't even checked in yet. The wheelchair assistance I'd requested? Nowhere to be found. "Ma'am, I'm sorry," the young man at the check-in counter said, not looking sorry at all, "but it looks like there was a mix-up with your wheelchair request. We can try to get someone to you in about an hour." An hour? Our flight was in 2 hours, and Joe needed time to rest before boarding. But you know what? After raising 3 kids and working as a nurse for 35 years, I'd learned to roll with the punches. "It's okay, sweetheart," Joe whispered to me, squeezing my hand. "We'll make it work." That's my husband, always trying to make things easier for everyone else, even when he's the one struggling most. We made our way slowly through security, Joe gripping his walker with white knuckles, me carrying both our carry-ons because I couldn't bear to watch him struggle with the extra weight. Other passengers were huffing and puffing behind us, but most people were kind enough to be patient. Most people, but not everyone. Because that's when I first saw her. She was standing 3 people behind us in the security line, tapping her manicured nails against her phone case and sighing loud enough for the entire terminal to hear. Designer everything, purse, shoes, that kind of blonde highlights that cost more than most people's mortgage payments. But it was the way she was looking at Joe that made my stomach clench. Like he was some kind of inconvenience. Like he didn't deserve to be there. I had no idea that in less than 2 hours, this woman would try to destroy what might be my husband's last trip to see his granddaughters. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Because first, we had to get to our gate. The walk to gate B12 felt like a marathon. Joe was determined to do it himself, bless him, but every few yards he'd have to stop and catch his breath. His face was getting flushed, and I could see his hands shaking on the walker handles. "Joe, honey, maybe we should ask for help," I suggested gently. "I'm fine, Sarah, just need a minute." That's when I heard it. The sound that makes every decent person's skin crawl. Oh my God, how long is this going to take? I turned around, and there she was. Designer tracksuit woman, now close enough that I could smell her overpowering perfume. She had her phone out and was typing furiously, probably complaining to someone about how her day was being ruined by, and I quote, some old people who can't walk properly. I felt my face flush hot. Joe either didn't hear her or was pretending not to, but I could see his shoulders sag a little more. "Excuse me," I said, my voice steady but firm. "Is there a problem?" She looked up from her phone like I was interrupting something incredibly important. "Well, yes, actually. Some of us have connections to make. Maybe next time you should plan better if you can't keep up." Plan better? I wanted to tell her about the wheelchair request that got mixed up. I wanted to explain that this man had served in Vietnam, raised 3 children, built half the houses in our neighborhood with his own 2 hands. But Joe squeezed my elbow gently. "It's okay, sweetheart," he whispered. "People like that aren't worth our energy." So we kept walking, slowly, carefully, with Miss Designer tracksuit huffing and puffing behind us like the world's most entitled steam engine. When we finally reached our gate, Joe collapsed into one of those uncomfortable airport chairs like he'd just run a marathon. His breathing was labored, and I could see sweat beading on his forehead despite the airport air conditioning. "I'll get you some water," I said, but before I could move, our friend in the tracksuit had marched right up to the gate counter. "Excuse me," she announced loudly enough for half the gate area to hear, "but I need to discuss my seating situation." The gate agent, a patient-looking woman named Maria according to her name tag, smiled professionally. "Of course, how can I help you?" "Well, I booked a window seat, but I'm in 14B, that's a middle seat. I specifically paid for a window." Maria checked her computer, frowning slightly. "I'm showing you confirmed in 14B, which is indeed a middle seat. Did you perhaps book this through a third-party site?" And that's when things got interesting. Because I watched this woman's face go through about 5 different emotions in 3 seconds flat. Confusion, realization, panic, and then pure, calculated determination. "That can't be right," she said, her voice getting higher. "I always book window seats. Always. There must be some mistake." "Let me see what I can do," Maria said, typing away. "Unfortunately, we're completely full today, but—" "No, you don't understand," the woman interrupted, her voice now carrying that particular tone that every service worker dreads. "I need a window seat. I have a medical condition. I get claustrophobic." I watched Maria's expression change from helpful to carefully neutral. "If you have a medical condition that requires specific seating, we would need documentation from your doctor, and it would need to be noted in your reservation." The woman's mouth fell open like a fish. That's when I knew for sure she was lying through her perfectly veneered teeth. But here's where it gets really good. Because instead of backing down or accepting defeat like a normal person, this woman doubled down in the most spectacular way possible. Her eyes scanned the gate area, looking for something, and then they landed on us. On Joe, specifically, sitting in his chair, still catching his breath from our long walk. I watched her face light up like she'd just solved world hunger. She marched over to us with the confidence of someone who'd clearly never been told no in her entire privileged life. "Excuse me," she said, her voice suddenly sweet as artificial honey. "I couldn't help but notice your husband seems to be having some difficulty getting around." Warning bells started going off in my head immediately. Joe looked up at her with those kind eyes of his, always ready to see the best in people. "I'm managing just fine, thank you," he said politely. "Oh, but that's just it," she continued, her voice getting louder, clearly playing to an audience. "I don't think air travel is really appropriate for someone in your condition. Especially not a long flight like this. What if there's an emergency? What if you need medical attention?" I felt my blood pressure spike. "I'm sorry, what exactly are you suggesting?" "Well," she said, looking around dramatically, "I'm just thinking about what's best for everyone. Maybe you should consider postponing this trip until he's feeling better. I mean, is it really fair to the other passengers if something happens?" The gate area had gone quiet. I could feel people staring, some nodding along with her, others looking uncomfortable. But Joe's face had gone pale, and I could see something breaking behind his eyes. "We have just as much right to be here as anyone else," I said, my voice getting dangerous. "Of course you do," she said with fake sympathy, "but sometimes the responsible thing is to know your limitations. I'm just worried about him. What if he collapses during boarding? What if he can't evacuate quickly in an emergency?" That's when she played her ace card. "Maybe it would be better if you left him at home next time." The words hit me like a physical slap. Leave him at home? Leave my husband, the love of my life, who'd been looking forward to this trip for months, at home like some kind of burden? But before I could respond, I heard something that made my heart break into a million pieces. Joe's voice, quiet and defeated. Maybe she's right, Sarah. Maybe I'm too much trouble. Oh, hell no. I stood up so fast my purse fell off my lap. Excuse me, miss. Victoria, she said with a smug smile. Victoria Hamilton. Well, Victoria Hamilton, let me tell you something about my husband. This man served 2 tours in Vietnam. He built our house with his own hands. He coached Little League for 20 years and never missed a single game. He's been married to me for 52 years and has loved me through cancer, through my mother's death, through raising 3 kids and helping raise 6 grandchildren. He has earned the right to visit his family, and no entitled princess in a designer tracksuit is going to tell him otherwise. Victoria's face flushed red. I was just trying to be helpful. No, you weren't. You were trying to shame an elderly man so you could. What? Get his seat? Make yourself feel important? Well, congratulations, Victoria. You've managed to make a 78-year-old veteran question whether he deserves to see his granddaughters. The entire gate was watching now. Some people were pulling out phones. I could see Maria, the gate agent, approaching with security. But Victoria wasn't done. Oh no, she was just getting started. You know what? Fine. Keep your seats. But when he slows down boarding and makes everyone late, don't blame me. When he needs help getting to the bathroom and disrupts the entire flight, don't blame me. Some people just don't know when to stay home where they belong. That's when Joe tried to stand up.my husband, this proud, strong man who'd never asked for help in his entire life, struggled to get out of that plastic airport chair. His walker was just slightly out of reach, and I watched him try 3 times to stand on his own. And Victoria Hamilton stood there watching with this satisfied smirk on her face like she'd just proven her point. That's when something inside me snapped. You know what, Victoria? You're absolutely right about one thing. Joe might need help sometimes. He might move a little slower than he used to. But you know what he doesn't do? He doesn't try to humiliate strangers in airport gates. He doesn't lie about medical conditions to get better seats. And he sure as hell doesn't treat other human beings like they're disposable. I reached into my purse and pulled out my phone. But since you're so concerned about inconveniencing other passengers, let me show you something. I opened up our boarding passes. You see these? 2A and 2B first class. Because when I booked this trip, I wanted to make sure my husband was as comfortable as possible for what might be his last time seeing his granddaughters. Victoria's smug expression faltered for just a second. So here's what's going to happen. When they call for first-class boarding, Joe and I are going to walk down that jetway together. And if he needs help, I'm going to help him. And if that takes a few extra minutes, then it takes a few extra minutes. Because that's what love looks like, Victoria. That's what 52 years of marriage looks like. I helped Joe to his feet and made sure his walker was positioned just right. And you? You're going to sit in your middle seat in row 14 and think about what kind of person tries to shame an elderly man for having the audacity to want to see his family. But Victoria Hamilton wasn't the type to go down without a fight. Oh, first class, she practically shrieked. Well, aren't you special? You know what? I think there's been a mistake. I'm supposed to be in first class too. She marched back over to the gate counter where poor Maria was still trying to process what she'd just witnessed. I need to speak to your supervisor, Victoria demanded. There's been a serious error with my reservation. I should be in first class, not these people. Maria looked at her computer screen, then back at Victoria. Ma'am, I'm showing you confirmed in 14B, economy class. There's no record of a first-class reservation. That's impossible. I always fly first class. Always. Check again. Maria's fingers flew over the keyboard. I'm looking at your entire reservation history with our airline, ma'am. You've flown with us 12 times in the past 2 years, and every single flight has been in economy class. You could have heard a pin drop in that gate area. Victoria's face went through more color changes than a mood ring. Well, there must be a computer error. I want to be upgraded. Immediately. I'm sorry, ma'am, but first class is completely sold out, and we don't have any upgrades available. That's when Victoria made the mistake that sealed her fate. Fine. Then I want their seats. She pointed directly at Joe and me. If they can't handle flying like normal people, they should give up their first-class seats to someone who can actually appreciate them. The entire gate area erupted. People started shouting at her. Someone yelled, "Are you kidding me right now?" Another person said, "Lady, you need help." But Maria, sweet professional Maria, just looked at Victoria with the kind of expression you reserve for people who've completely lost touch with reality. "Ma'am, I'm going to need to see your boarding pass." Victoria fumbled in her designer purse and pulled out her boarding pass, shoving it at Maria with shaking hands. Maria looked at it for exactly 3 seconds before her eyebrows shot up to her hairline. "Ma'am, this boarding pass is for tomorrow's flight." The words hung in the air like a bomb about to explode. "What do you mean tomorrow's flight?" Victoria snatched the boarding pass back, staring at it in horror. "Your reservation is for tomorrow, Wednesday, not today, Tuesday. Flight 447, departing at 2:15 p.m. I watched Victoria's face go through every stage of grief in fast forward. Denial, that can't be right. Anger, your system is wrong. Bargaining, can't you just put me on today's flight? Depression, the color draining from her face as she realized her mistake. But she never quite made it to acceptance. "No, no, no," she said, her voice getting higher and more frantic. "I have a very important meeting in Portland today. I have to be on this flight. You have to do something." Maria, who had shown the patience of a saint up to this point, maintained her professional composure. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but today's flight is completely full. I can help you change your reservation to today's flight, but you'd be on standby, and honestly, the chances of getting a seat are very slim." "This is unacceptable," Victoria shrieked. "Do you know who I am? Do you know how much money I spend with this airline?" That's when security showed up. 2 officers, both looking like they'd dealt with this exact scenario about 1,000 times before. "Ma'am, we're going to need you to lower your voice," the taller officer said calmly. But Victoria was past the point of rational thought. "These people," she pointed at Joe and me again, "they're the problem. They shouldn't be flying. They're going to cause delays and problems, and I'm the one who gets punished for it." The security officers exchanged a look that clearly said, "Here we go again." That's when the most beautiful thing happened. The other passengers at our gate started standing up. Not to leave, but to support us. A woman in her 60s spoke up first. "Officer, I've been watching this whole thing. And this lady has been harassing that elderly gentleman for the past hour." A businessman in a suit nodded. "She told them they should leave him at home." It was completely out of line. A young mother with a toddler chimed in. "She's been disrupting the entire gate area. My daughter is scared of her yelling." Victoria looked around frantically as more and more people started voicing their support for us and their disgust with her behavior. "This is ridiculous," she screamed. "I'm the victim here. I'm trying to get to an important meeting." That's when Maria dropped the final hammer. "Ma'am, I've checked your standby status for today's flight, and I'm afraid I have some bad news. Due to your behavior toward other passengers and the disruption you've caused, I'm not able to accommodate you on today's flight. You'll need to travel on your original reservation tomorrow." Victoria's mouth fell open so wide I thought her jaw might dislocate. "You can't do that. That's discrimination." "No ma'am, that's consequences." The security officers moved closer. "Ma'am, we're going to need you to gather your belongings and come with us." "I'm not going anywhere. I have rights." But the beautiful thing was, nobody cared anymore. The other passengers had turned away, dismissing her completely. The gate agents were preparing for boarding. Even the security officers looked bored. Victoria Hamilton, who had tried to humiliate my husband and ruin our trip, was being escorted away from the gate like the petulant child she'd proven herself to be. But the story doesn't end there. Oh no. The best part was still coming. As they called first-class boarding, Joe squeezed my hand. "Sarah, honey, I'm sorry you had to deal with all that because of me." I stopped dead in my tracks and looked at this man I'd loved for over half a century. "Joseph Michael Anderson, don't you dare apologize for existing. Don't you dare apologize for wanting to see your granddaughters. And don't you ever, ever let someone like that make you feel like you're a burden." His eyes filled with tears. I don't want to slow you down. Joe, listen to me. In sickness and in health, remember? For better or worse, you think a hip replacement and a walker change any of that? You think I love you less because you need help sometimes? The gate agent called our zone, and I helped Joe to his feet. Besides, I said with a grin, I have a feeling this flight is going to be a lot more peaceful without Miss Victoria Hamilton making everyone miserable. As we walked down the jetway, Joe moving slowly but steadily with his walker, I felt something I hadn't felt in months, pure, undiluted pride in my husband. Not despite his limitations, but because of how he'd handled himself with dignity in the face of that woman's cruelty. The flight attendant, a lovely woman named Jennifer, greeted us at the door. Mr. and Mrs. Anderson, I heard about what happened at the gate. I just want you to know that we're going to take excellent care of you today. As we settled into our first-class seats, Joe looked out the window and smiled for the first time all day. You know what, Sarah? I think those granddaughters of ours are going to get quite a story when we arrive. The 5-hour flight to Portland was everything I'd hoped it would be when I'd booked those first-class seats. Joe was able to stretch out, the flight attendants were attentive without being hovering, and for the first time in months, I watched my husband truly relax. About halfway through the flight, Jennifer came by to check on us. How are you folks doing? Wonderful, Joe said, and I could tell he meant it. Thank you for being so kind. Can I tell you something? Jennifer said quietly. I've been flying for 15 years, and what I saw at that gate today. What that woman tried to do to you. It was completely unacceptable, but the way you handled it, both of you, with such grace and dignity? That's the kind of passengers we're honored to serve. She paused, glancing around to make sure no one was listening. Between you and me, word travels fast among gate agents. Victoria Hamilton has been flagged in our system. She won't be flying with us again anytime soon. Joe and I exchanged looks. Sweet, sweet justice. But here's the really good part, Jennifer continued with a mischievous smile. Her very important meeting, in Portland? I may have done a little digging during my break. She's an aspiring influencer who was supposed to attend some social media conference. When she didn't show up today, they gave her spot to someone on the waiting list. The irony was so perfect it almost hurt. Victoria Hamilton, who had tried to shame my husband for inconveniencing other people, had missed her own important event because she couldn't be bothered to read her own boarding pass correctly. When we landed in Portland, Joe was like a new man. The rest, the comfortable seats, and maybe most importantly, the validation that he belonged there just as much as anyone else, had restored something in him that I'd been afraid was lost forever. Our son Michael was waiting for us at baggage claim with Emma and Sophie, and when those little girls saw their Grandpa Joe coming down the escalator, their faces lit up like Christmas morning. Grandpa Joe, Grandpa Joe, they ran toward us, and I watched my husband's face transform with pure joy. Emma, being 6 and incredibly observant, immediately noticed the walker. Grandpa, what's that thing? This, Joe said, patting his walker with pride, is my special walking helper. It helps me move around so I can come visit you and your sister. That's so cool, Sophie chimed in. Can I try it? And just like that, what Victoria Hamilton had tried to turn into a source of shame became a source of fascination and acceptance from the people who mattered most. Michael helped us gather our luggage, and as we walked toward the exit, he said quietly, Dad, you look good. Different somehow. Joe winked at me. Your mother and I had quite an adventure getting here. Remind me to tell you about it sometime. Remember those phones that people were pulling out during the gate confrontation? Well, as it turns out, several passengers had recorded Victoria's meltdown and posted it online. By the time we got to Michael and Jennifer's house, the videos had already started going viral. Mom, Dad, you need to see this, Michael said, pulling up his laptop. There we were, in grainy cell phone video, but clear enough to see exactly what had happened. The comments were pouring in. That poor man just wanted to see his grandchildren. I'm crying. The way she stood up for her husband. That's true love. Victoria Hamilton is everything wrong with society today. Someone please find this elderly couple and tell them the whole internet is rooting for them. But my favorite comment came from someone who identified themselves as being on our flight. Update. The old guy made it to Portland just fine. Saw him at baggage claim with his family. His granddaughters were so excited to see him they were practically bouncing off the walls. Meanwhile, Karen missed her flight because she can't read a calendar. Justice served. Joe chuckled as he read over my shoulder. Well, I guess I'm famous now. Infamous is more like it, I laughed. Infamous for having the audacity to want to travel while elderly. The week we spent in Portland was magical in ways I hadn't dared hope for. Joe, energized by the girls' excitement and acceptance, threw himself into grandparent mode with a vigor I hadn't seen since before his surgery. He told them stories about his childhood, taught them card games, and even managed to get down on the floor to play with their dollhouse, with some help getting back up, but who's counting? Emma, our little artist, drew a picture of Joe with his walker, adding rainbow colors and glitter because, as she explained, Grandpa's walker helps him be happy, so it should be pretty. Sophie, our little performer, insisted on helping Joe walk by holding onto the walker with him, chattering nonstop about everything she saw along the way. "You know what, Sarah?" Joe said one evening as we watched the girls play in the backyard. "That woman at the airport did me a favor." "How's that?" "She reminded me that I've got people in my corner. People who think I'm worth fighting for. I'd forgotten that for a while." He squeezed my hand. "And she reminded me that my granddaughters don't see an old man with a walker. They just see their Grandpa Joe who loves them enough to fly across the country to see them." On our last day in Portland, Michael showed us something that made the whole ordeal even more satisfying. "You guys, you have to see this," he said, pulling up a local news article on his phone. The headline read, "Aspiring Influencer's Airport Meltdown Goes Viral for All the Wrong Reasons." The article detailed how Victoria Hamilton's behavior had not only cost her the conference opportunity but had also resulted in her losing several sponsorship deals after brands saw the videos of her berating elderly passengers. "It gets better," Michael continued, scrolling down. "Look at this." It was a statement from the airline. "We are aware of the incident involving passenger Victoria Hamilton at Phoenix Sky Harbor Airport. After a thorough review, we have determined that her behavior was completely unacceptable and violated our passenger conduct policies. Ms. Hamilton has been banned from flying with our airline for a period of 2 years. We apologize to the passengers who were subjected to her harassment and want to reaffirm our commitment to ensuring all passengers, regardless of age or mobility status, are treated with dignity and respect." Joe shook his head in amazement. 2 years? That seems harsh. "Does it, though?" I asked. "She tried to humiliate you, Joe. She suggested we leave you at home like you were some kind of burden. She made a scene that upset other passengers, including children. And she missed her own flight because she couldn't be bothered to read her boarding pass correctly. Plus," Michael added with a grin, "according to this article, she tried to blame the airline for her mistake and demanded they give her your first-class seats as compensation." Even Joe had to laugh at that. Well, I suppose actions have consequences. Our return flight to Phoenix was blissfully uneventful. The gate agents were professional, our fellow passengers were kind, and Joe navigated the airport with confidence he hadn't shown in months. As we settled into our first-class seats for the flight home, Joe pulled out his phone and showed me something that made my heart swell. It was a video Emma had made for us. She was holding up the picture she'd drawn of Joe with his rainbow walker, and in her sweet 6-year-old voice, she said, "Grandpa Joe, thank you for coming to see us even though flying is hard for you now. Mommy and Daddy told us that some mean lady tried to make you feel bad at the airport, but I want you to know that we think you're the bravest grandpa in the whole world. We love you and your special walker, and we can't wait to see you again soon." Sophie's face popped into the frame. "Yeah. And next time, can you bring the walker? I want to decorate it with stickers." Joe wiped away a tear as the video ended. "You know what, Sarah? I think I'm going to take Sophie up on that offer. A few sparkly stickers might make this old thing look a little more fashionable." The flight attendant, a different Jennifer but just as kind, stopped by our seats. "Excuse me, are you the couple from the viral airport video?" My stomach dropped. I'd hoped we'd escaped all that attention. But she smiled warmly. "I just wanted to say that what you did for your husband was beautiful. My own grandmother stopped traveling after my grandfather passed because she was afraid of being judged for needing help. Your story has inspired her to book a trip to come see us next month." "That's wonderful," Joe said, his face lighting up. "You tell her that this old guy says traveling is worth a few bumps along the way." As our plane descended into Phoenix, I found myself reflecting on the entire experience. What had started as a simple trip to see our grandchildren had turned into something much more significant. Joe had rediscovered his confidence. Our granddaughters had learned that love doesn't have conditions or expiration dates. And I had been reminded that sometimes, standing up for the people you love means standing up to the people who want to tear them down. You know what the best part of this whole thing is? I said to Joe as we prepared for landing. What's that, sweetheart? Victoria Hamilton thought she was punishing us. She thought she was putting us in our place, reminding us that we didn't belong. But all she really did was give us a story that brought us closer together and showed our family how much we love each other. Joe nodded thoughtfully. Plus, she missed her important meeting and got banned from the airline. Plus that, I laughed. As we disembarked in Phoenix, moving slowly but steadily through the terminal, I spotted something that made me stop in my tracks. There, near our gate, was a new sign: passengers requiring additional assistance are welcome to board early. All passengers are expected to treat fellow travelers with dignity and respect, regardless of age, mobility, or other circumstances. Look at that, Joe, I said, pointing to the sign. He read it carefully, then smiled. Think we had something to do with that? I think Victoria Hamilton had something to do with that, I corrected. Her behavior was so outrageous that it reminded everyone how people should actually treat each other. 6 months later, I received a message through Facebook from a woman named Carol in Denver. Mrs. Anderson, it read, I saw your airport story online, and I wanted to thank you. My husband has Parkinson's, and I've been afraid to travel with him because I was worried about people judging us or being impatient with his mobility issues. But your story gave me courage. We just got back from visiting our son in California, and it was the best trip we've taken in years. Thank you for reminding me that love means fighting for each other.